In today's episode, surfing the 2001 era net, rap battles with underage drinking, and plot holes. Lots and lots of plot holes. I'm Wes, and today we're going to dive deep into the second entry of my favorite ship-collecting, virus-busting series, Mega Man Battle Network 2. Now, if you're watching this video, I assume you're at least a little familiar with the Battle Network series. I've done other videos on it, link in the description, but strangely enough, I haven't done a retrospective of the first game yet. Well, the reason for this is pretty simple. Battle Network 2 improves on everything from the first game to the point that it kinda makes the first game obsolete. And once the Battle Network Legacy Collection was first announced, I knew right away this is how I'd be spending my 2023. And frankly, I wanted to skip the original game so I could jump straight into what I foolishly used to consider was the best Battle Network game. Oh, what a fool I was. That being said, I am glad I played through 2, if not for anything but to get me primed for the third entry, which actually is up there for best Battle Network game. It's not that Battle Network 2 is a bad game or anything, it added a ton of new features that became staples for the series. The combat and gameplay is much more refined over the original, and the game definitely has its shining moments. Where the game could be a bit of a mess is the storyline, which is, well, it's bad, but endearingly bad, like The Room.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Okay, not quite that bad, but you'll get what I mean soon enough. Again, I assume you're already familiar with the series and its characters, and hell, maybe someday I'll do a video on Battle Network 1 and explain everything from scratch, but for now, I want to just jump into the story, so here's as quick of a summary as I can give. It's the future. People use the internet. There are viruses. There are internet avatars you can make fight the viruses. You can keep internet people in your cell phone. Little boy uses Internet Man to save world from old bastard. And to sum up the characters using just one word, Lan, benevolent. Mega Man, heroic. Male, love interest. Yes, I know that's 2 words. Yai, ostentatious. Dex, braggart. Chod, edgelord. Dr. Wily, dead? Lan's parents should be arrested for child endangerment. Oh my god. We'll get into that later. Okay, you're all caught up. Let's get into the story. Chapter 1, Yai Has Gas. It's summer break, and Lan is excited to meet his friends at the Square, a digital hotspot where all the hip young kids are. So basically, my old GeoCities page. I was so popular in middle school, you guys. Outside his house is a wig-wearing electricity technician of highly suspect nature. Hey Lan, he's right outside your house staring at your front door. Has your mom not taught you about stranger danger? Lan jacks into the net, and right away, the internet in Battle Network 2 looks way better than the previous game. Look how empty and desolate Battle Network 1 looks by comparison. I swear there was more excitement at my pre-vasectomy party. Battle Network 1, in general, was a pretty linear game without a whole lot of side content or bonus stuff. The first game essentially set up the skeleton of the series, and Battle Network 2 helped flesh it out. There's a lot of other quality of life improvements here that became staples of the series, like a dedicated run button, and elemental theme style changes, which aren't super developed or well thought out, but do set the groundwork for the soul and cross systems in later games. To think this would be the idea that leads to Mega Man's peak evolutionary form, a choo-choo train. Also new to the game are security cubes, which are password-protected barriers that connect your friends' home pages to the net. These cubes represent the emotional walls we put up to keep our friends at a distance. It's very deep. Anyways, Mega Man gets his Z license for virus busting, aka the obligatory battle tutorial segment of the game. Why does Lan need to continue learning about virus busting? Didn't he already prove himself as a net battler and save the world in the previous game? And for that matter, what happened to all of his battle chips? Did he bet them all on red or something? That's a gambling joke. Not that I would know. I don't have a problem. I just like to feel something once in a while. Lan suddenly gets a call from Glide, Yai's Navi, who says he's concerned that Yai's been in the bathtub too long. Bro, she's probably discovering herself, or at very least she's taking a big Either way, give her some privacy, who cares? Well, Male and Dex are concerned too, so you meet them outside of Yai's house. It looks like there's a dangerous gas leak and Yai actually is in danger. Dex, ever heroic, bursts in to save his friend and immediately dies. Lan jacks Mega Man into the house's HVAC and turns the fans on, clearing out the gas. He discovers that the system had been hijacked by the creepy stranger from earlier, to absolutely nobody's surprise. The stranger explains how he planned on blackmailing Yai's rich parents by threatening to gas their child, which makes absolutely no sense because he literally already tried to kill her and never contacted her parents. Let's make that the first in our story plot hole tally. Lan confronts him on this, and he responds with, "Suck gas and die," which sounds exactly like something Elon Musk or some other emotionally stunted high school edgelord would say. His Navi, Airman, goes down incredibly easy. Afterwards, Lan struggles with the impossible choice of being forced to see Yai naked or letting her drown in a bathtub.
How you doing? Should you have a seat over in that chair, please?
That's a lose-lose, my friend. Next, we're treated to this gem of a scene where we learn that the strange man was an agent working for Gospel, the self-appointed net mafia. Gospel has filled in the void that World 3 left behind in the previous game, because why can't anything just be nice? Gospel's mysterious leader lets the man know he's failed his mission, and that he will now die via exploding suitcase. The stranger is like, whatever, man. No, really. He's incredibly petulant and blasé about being murdered, which is pretty funny considering it's the first time a character gets killed in the series, and it's shrugged off pretty easily.
You're out of your element, little man! Ho, ho, ho! Ho, ho! Ho, ho, ho!
Chapter 2. This story is a bit campy. While Yai is sleeping off her concussion, which I've heard is always a good idea, Lan steals her security cube password and logs onto her computer. An invasion of privacy I'm assuming Lan justifies with having just saved her life. Yai's homepage, funnily enough, is just a tiled wallpaper of her own face. What kind of vain narcissist would do something like that anyways? That night, Gospel posts on the community chat board that they are planning a terrorist attack. Chad, a government-certified net battler and preteen, decides that this must be a hoax and casually deletes the message without running it by anybody. And who said kids were stupid? Not any stupider than a terrorist organization telling people what their surprise attack is going to be ahead of time, for no reason, I guess. The next day, Lan meets with his friends to go on a grand camping adventure. Before they could get to the campground, they're confronted with a series of obstacles, such as bees. This means you'll need to create a makeshift torch using objects you find around the area by blindly pressing A at different spots because the developers couldn't bother making sprites for the objects in question. Once you've destroyed the bees with fire, you'll run into Obstacle 2, a menacing robot bear. Lan jacks into it, and Mega Man is able to deactivate it from the inside. Mail suggests pushing it to the side so it doesn't scare other campers, because suddenly being surprised to see a bear in the bushes is obviously less scary than seeing it clearly in the distance. Finally, obstacle number 3, a series of fetch quests. As the game progresses, this will pretty much become the standard. Honestly, this game should have been subtitled Mega Man Battle Network 2 - go back and forth arbitrarily to find bullshit MacGuffins to pad the game's runtime. Just as soon as Lan and friends are about to enjoy their barbecue, there's a huge explosion at the nearby. There you'll find Chad, who explains that he found a bomb. He tasks you with finding the 4 detonators and deactivating them. So like, what are you going to do, Chad? Stand by the bomb and contribute nothing? Anyways, you go on another scavenger hunt, this time looking for PET detonators that are scattered around the campground. Jack in, defuse them, move on to the next. Chad tells you that the last detonator is likely being held by the terrorist himself. If you confront this dude, he'll eventually admit to being the bomber. This shouldn't come as a surprise considering he has a unique sprite and avatar in a game where there's only like a dozen different NPC designs that are reused. Dave, the eco-terrorist with the most unintimidating name imaginable, says he plans on blowing up the dam as retribution for all the campers ruining the valley with litter. Really, that's it? I mean, getting back at people bringing boomboxes to camp would be more justifiable than that. Why did you even come out to nature if you're just gonna blast your pop music? What are you even doing with your life? Dave then invites you to jack into his PET to try to stop him, which he absolutely doesn't need to do. But then again, he obviously isn't great at making wise life decisions, so why start now? Mega Man enters the PET, where he's confronted with the terrorist Navi, Quick Man, which doesn't really match the theme, but Bomb Man was already used in Battle Network 1, so whatever. Quick Man's a zippy little but with the right timing, you could beat him without too much effort. Dave then explains, in typical supervillain fashion, that Quick Man himself is the detonator, and that if he's deleted, the bomb will go off. But just then, Chod's Navi, Proto Man, swoops in to save the day. He kills the already dying Quick Man, and somehow this stops the detonation, even though this directly contradicts what was explicitly said not 3 seconds earlier. But hey, cool entrance, dude. With the day saved, Dave does a whole, I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for all you meddling kids Scooby-Doo villain thing, which I think is appropriate if your crime, for instance, is pretending to be a ghost so you could stop teens from having sex in your abandoned lighthouse. But Dave almost killed thousands of people via terrorist acts, so really he should be saying, oh I'm probably gonna get tortured in a secret offshore military prison now. But this game is rated E for everybody, so he'll probably just get off with a warning once he learns an important lesson.
So, you're Mega Man. You won't stand in our way.
Chapter 3. Here I go genociding again. The next chapter of the game begins under the flimsiest of motivations. Lan gets distracted by a balloon in the park like some sort of dog or infant, and this leads to him deciding he's going to write an essay on different types of delicious foods for his school project. And what country has the best foods? Well, Yumland, of course, a country that apparently exists in the Battle Network universe, whose ethnic inspiration is not really clear at all. Is it France? Is it Italy? I really couldn't tell you, but they're known for their delicious food, so I guess it's whatever country you want it to be. Lan decides that the best way to learn about food is by looking at pictures of it on the internet. And normally I'd let that joke stand as it is, but considering my Pinterest board is 90% food and 10% feet pics, I guess Lan's logic is sound enough. So now that Lan is a foodie, it's time to go to Yumland. Good thing he's not a nympho or he'd have to go to...
Stop! No! Just stop it!
Unfortunately, the path is blocked and Lan needs a Class A license to get through. An official at Scilab tells you that you're not qualified and will have to do some more mindless tasks before you could get your license. Not qualified? We saved the motherfucking world, you corporate tool! This game has a plethora of time-wasting side quests, like taking a request at the bulletin board that could only be accessed by taking a bus to Marineland. The person requesting help is at a campsite that requires another subway ride. When you talk to them, they need help in an internet area that can only be accessed in ACDC Town. And why can't I access the internet anywhere? It's the internet. So that's another subway ride. Do the mission, then subway trip back to the campsite to tell them that you did the mission. Then one last subway trip back to Marineland to check off the mission on the bulletin. Why the hell can't I access the bulletin anywhere from my PET? Why can't I communicate directly with the requester from my PET? Isn't this supposed to be the future? After completing the missions and getting the A license, Mega Man makes his way through Yumland, which is so unnecessarily labyrinthine and seemingly designed to keep you lost as long as possible. It's like a freaking IKEA up in here. When you finally get to Yum Square, a pretty harrowing scene plays out where Shadow Man, who was technically introduced in the first game, is straight up genociding all of Yumland. Yeah, Shadow Man has single-handedly murdered every single digital citizen of Yumland's net, which seems improbable even by this game's standards. I mean, what, they couldn't jack out? What, were they just like, hey, that Shadow Man is killing a bunch of people, and we all have the ability to instantly teleport away whenever we want? But let's stick around and see how this plays out. Shadow Man leaves, but not before killing the king of Yumland. By the time Mega Man arrives, there's only one survivor, who tells him everything we just saw. This game in particular has a lot of translation issues, but one particularly glaring one is that, on several occasions, Mega Man and Lan refer to Yumland as Netopia, which is a completely different country. It's kinda adding insult to injury for this last survivor. It'd be like if white people massacred the Native American population and then referred to them as Indians because they thought they were in India. Oh wait. The surviving Navi then explains that Shadow Man will be going after Electopia next, and Mega Man and Lan resolve to stop him before it's too late. Okay, can we take a second to think about the logic of this? Just how strong is Shadow Man supposed to be? Because, and not to spoil anything and get too far ahead here, but Mega Man will be able to beat him without too much effort. So does that mean that every single Navi on the internet is so weak that they all collectively, working together, thousands of them, couldn't stop one C-tiered villain Navi? They couldn't even spring a trap or something? And it's not like killing a Navi also kills the human owner. Literally every citizen of Yumland who had a Navi is now keenly aware of what's happening and what the assailant looks like. This would already be blowing up on the news, and governments would be devising strategies already. But instead, everybody just kind of throws up their hands and goes, "Oh no!" You know, I'm gonna have to add this whole story arc to the plot hole counter. Before our protagonists can get to Electopia, they're stopped by Cutman, Shadow Man's second in command. Cutman is unique in that he is the only boss that appears without a stage or an operator. So it's like, who even are you, dude? Mega Man tells him to cut it out, and deletes him without much effort. Seriously, Cutman may be the easiest boss in the game, he's a joke. Back in the real world, Lan's dad and the other scientists of Scilab are amazed that Yum Square was taken down so easily, despite their supposed world-class security. I mean, they don't have preteens working their security system, so of course they're gonna be defeated so easily. Lan's dad says that he's gonna work on a weapon system to oppose the Gospel Navi, and it's like, you're waiting till after a terrorist attack to begin building countermeasure weapons? What exactly do you do all day, Lan's dad? Lan's dad asks you to find a component he needs to develop his new weapon. He refuses to say what it is, and when asked where to find it, he literally says, "I don't know, possibly on the net." Thanks, Dad. That really narrows it down. The next hour or so of the game is a series of fetch quests that will eventually lead you right back to Yum Square, and wouldn't you know it, that's where Lan's dad's MacGuffin program is. Apparently, it's a Yumland national treasure, and so you'll face a number of security programs trying to stop you from taking it. But it's like, come on, you don't need treasure, you're all dead already. Lan gives the program to his dad, and he installs it into Mega Man. Nothing happens yet, but Lan's dad promises when the time is right, the program will activate and make Mega Man stronger. There's some tedious stuff in the story next, but let's just skip ahead to the part where Gospel is now attacking Scilab's mother computer. If they succeed, Electopia will be completely without cybersecurity, which would not really be a noticeable change at all. Lan meets 3 Scilab net battlers trying to fend off Gospel's cyber attack, one of whom says, "How about it? What did you think of us adults' skills?" Which, my gosh, I didn't know how cool you adults were. Lan jacks Mega Man into the mother computer where he encounters a Gospel suicide bomber. The other 3 Scilab people's Navis sacrifice themselves to stop the blast. During this pivotal scene, Mega Man says, "clunk," for reasons that aren't clear at all. Maybe he inhaled too much of that toxic gas from earlier? Going further into the main mother computer, you run into Proto Man and Chod, who apparently have just been there the whole time somehow. They insist on one-upping you, with Chod inexplicably telling Lan to stay out of this and leave it to the officials, despite the fact that all the officials just had their Navis deleted because they suck butt at net security and net battling. Proto Man runs ahead of you, and you'll have to go through a series of word puzzles to get to the end of the stage. To give you an idea of the difficulty here, the first puzzle is, Curiosity killed the blank. To be clear, this is to protect the whole of Electopia's cyber infrastructure. I know this game came out in 2001, but damn, I can't even check my Gmail without having to show 3 forms of ID. There's a few twists and turns in the next half hour or so that ultimately make no difference story-wise, so I'm gonna brush through it pretty quickly. Shadow Man shows up and Proto Man stays behind to fight him, leaving Mega Man to jack into the real mother computer for the 4th time in a row. That Shadow Man Proto Man was fighting was a fake, rendering that whole part of the storyline pointless. You face the real Shadow Man in the real mother computer, and Lan's dad swings by to give Mega Man the ultimate weapon he was developing, which is literally just a big bazooka. Proto Man appears and holds Shadow Man still so that Mega Man doesn't miss and hit the mother computer by accident. Mega Man doesn't want Proto Man to sacrifice his life in the blast, but he's assured that Proto Man's brain can be backed up from a copy, rendering the emotional drama here pointless as there's literally nothing to lose. Mega Man fires, but surprise, it's more Shadow Man clones. Then the real Shadow Man appears, and you finally get to fight him.
Thank you!
This, by the way, is around the time the program installed into Mega Man pops into effect. Here we're introduced to the style change system, which, like I mentioned earlier, is pretty rudimentary compared to the system it evolved into in later games, but it's nonetheless a little more interesting than standard vanilla Mega Man. Basically, the style system is a combination of two different upgrades. One is an element, water, earth, wind, and fire, each of which naturally gives you a defensive boosts towards that element and a weakness towards the opposite element. And then there's the second upgrade, which will either be the ability to carry a shield, have a high attack power, or a few other things that could be pretty useful. To my knowledge, which combination of element and upgrade you get is completely random, so you'll just kinda have to hope you get lucky. Now, the reason the system sucks so much is that it literally takes hundreds of battles before you can get a new style change, and it's always random, so you'll probably get the same one twice, and you can only hold 2 styles at a time. Not exactly a perfect system, but hey, it certainly is in the game. Anyways, Shadow Man dies, and Lan shows some concern over the injured Proto Man, but Chad, ever proud, slaps his hand away and runs off like a little piss baby. Whatever, dude. Lan's dad informs you that Scilab's net battlers had their navis backed up, so they'll also be just fine. Hey, if it's so easy to resurrect a navi from deletion, then surely some of Yumland navis were backed up, right? Chapter 4. Never send an unaccompanied minor to Netopia. Now that the world is safe from gospel for the time being, it's time to get back to regular life. Lan emotionally manipulates Mega Man into doing his homework for him, but before he can get started, they get an email from the Net Battler HQ in Netopia, which apparently is a thing. It's an invitation to come and discuss with other Net Battlers in person how to deal with gospel. Not discussing cybersecurity tactics over phone or email is the only plot point in the story that actually makes sense, so for that, I'm going to subtract a point from the plot hole scoreboard. Lan is forced to tell his mom that he's going overseas, a fact that she immediately embraces because she does not give a shit. You can get a passport at the Scilab building from this receptionist, who you also have the option of hitting on. Is this that Riz I keep hearing all the young people talking about? Lan makes it to the airport and is immediately robbed by this Netopian pickpocket piece of shit. This is just the beginning of all the horrible things that happened to this 11-year-old on his first overseas trip. So, I'm gonna make another scoreboard, this time for how much Lan's overseas trip sucked butt. After a 10-hour flight, Lan and Mega Man arrive in Netopia, which is more or less supposed to be Europe. Everyone speaks in fractured English, and I actually found this to be really funny and charming. What I didn't find charming, however, is the strange man that invites Lan to get into his car. Lan, despite being constantly abused by sketchy adults throughout the entire first and second game, is like, "Sure, I'll get into your car, nice strange man." To no one's surprise, this strange man locks you in his car and threatens to kill you if you don't give him all your battle chips. Damn this big city crime! I want to go back to Electopia, where the only thing I have to worry about is people trying to gas me to death. I think it's worth pointing out that for just this one instance, a sprite of a black NPC is recolored as a white man, and I'm assuming Capcom did this to not appear racist in the same way robbers in home security commercials are always white dudes with Brooklyn accents. But the weird thing is, if they were attempting to not seem racist, why did they have this black dude praying to God for fried chicken? Or this guy... You know what? We'll get to him soon enough. Lan finds his way to the hotel, and after getting robbed twice in a row, he's pretty irritated. He takes his frustration out on Mega Man, and the two really get into it, culminating in Lan calling his friend a mega dummy. Didn't know Lan had the roasts, did ya? He storms out in a fit of rage and runs into Higsby, a former World 3 villain turned ally from the first game. Lan vents to Higsby about his fight with Mega Man. Higsby tells Lan that Mega Man and him were such good friends, and they used to f*** all the time, and it'd be really sad if they didn't f*** each other anymore, and arguments come and go, but friends are forever, yada yada yada. This inspires Lan to go back to the hotel and make up with Mega Man, but of course, things can't just be nice for a second. When he gets back, Mega Man tells him that a strange man, for the record, this is the third time they've been robbed today, broke into the room, stole Lan's passport, and used a virus to attack Mega Man. Geez, our boys really can't catch a break, can they? But despite the setback, Lan and Mega Man still make up and decide to hunt for the missing passport together. Their search takes them to this seedy alley, where a kid explains that the passport is probably on its way to the Undernet, which is exactly what it sounds like. He points you to Raoul, leader of the Garbage Gang, which is what I'm calling them since they hang around the dumpsters. Raoul offers to let you jack into his boombox to access the net and find the passport, but only if you could defeat him in battle. I mean, Lan could just, go to the public library or something. There's a million places to access the net, but what fun would that be? Probably a lot of fun.
Take a look, it's in a book.
After defeating Raoul's Thunderman and earning his respect through force, Lan jacks Mega Man into the net and tracks down the passport before it gets sold into the Undernet.
Hooray!
Lan then talks to this kid who mentions hearing a rumor about a rich old broad recently buying up a huge collection of battle chips. He heads to the nearby jewelry store, and that's where we meet Miss Millions, who is high class and doesn't relate to commoners. She's also incredibly horny, and almost everything she says is riddled with lustful innuendo. And it doesn't help that her Navi, Snake Man, is the most phallic of all the animal-themed robots, except maybe for Priapalooda Man. Fortunately, Snake Man is mostly flaccid. And Lan's able to get all of his battle chips back. And Miss Millions has an old lady orgasm, so everybody wins.
Hooray! Question mark?
The next day, Lan goes to the secret net battler meeting in Netopia Castle via this hidden wall, which I assume runs on Harry Potter magic. There you'll meet Johnson. Hey, wasn't he one of the guys that robbed you yesterday? These generic NPC sprites, man. Raoul is there as well, and a few others. You'll also meet Princess Pride, who's the princess of Creamland. Apparently this is supposed to be like Ice Cream Land, but still, every time I say that name, it makes me... Also, Chad is there too, because of course he is. The meeting begins, and one of the members explains that Gospel is creating some sort of super Navi, and by explains, I mean he barely broaches the subject before everyone in the room falls through medieval-style trap holes in the ground. Lan finds himself in jail. The previous speaker calls to make sure everyone got off successfully. He goes on to explain that Gospel has infiltrated their ranks, no duh, and that the Mole has activated the castle's self-defense system. Possibly, the Mole also wants to murder them all one by one horror movie style, but that remains to be seen. Lan needs to get out of the dungeon, but there's booby traps everywhere. Fortunately, there's a nearby switch that inexplicably allows you to jack in despite it being an ancient device. Now, this leads to arguably the most infuriating part of the game. The gimmick with the following series of stages is that you have to go through them while avoiding ghosts, thieves, zombies, and vampires. All things that make little sense in the cyber world, but hey, a theme is a theme. These little bastards have pre-programmed patterns. It's not a good time if any of them touch you, as you'll lose a ton of money or HP. The problem is there clearly wasn't any testing of this mechanic before it was slapped into the game. These enemies are cheap as hell. Some of them spawn right next to you, or they'll move faster than you, or they'll trap you in a dead end you'd have no way of knowing was there until you ran into it. Consequently, there's very little you could do to avoid these little Halloween f***s even if you follow their pattern. I hate this chapter of the game so much. Lan makes it a little further through the dungeon when he's suddenly engulfed in a burning ring of fire. Fortunately for him, his good friend Mail, who's just that, a good friend, nothing more, gave him something before his trip. It's this completely plot-specific device that will totally save Lan at just the right time. All Lan has to do is carefully toss this wireless device and have it connect to the switch on the wall, and he only gets one shot. Well, by this point in the story, Lan and Chad are the only net battlers left, with everyone else having their Navi picked off one by one. This leads Lan to the not unreasonable assumption that he is in fact the Mole. Mega Man turns off the fire, and Lan finds Raoul passed out in the next room. Chad appears, and he and Lan do a Spider-Man pointy meme and accuse each other of being the Mole. This leads to a fight between Proto Man and Mega Man, which doesn't go well for Proto Man. Chad is embarrassed by how bad he sucks at everything. Lan goes up a very long flight of stairs that, I'm not gonna lie, gave me Super Mario 64 flashbacks. And at the top is Princess Pride from Creamland. She apparently let herself get caught in her own trap earlier so that she wouldn't arouse suspicion. But then, that brings up a number of plot holes. Like, if Lan had failed, she would have been stuck in the dungeon forever. She didn't have a wireless device, so how was she going to get across the fire trap? If she were to be the only one that survived the dungeon and made it out, wouldn't that arouse suspicion? So, yep, You guessed it, we're adding another point to the plot hole counter. Only 3 more points and I get a free sub! Lan tells her that she won't get away with this, and the princess points out that there is a literal chasm between them. Good thing Lan has his wireless device. He tosses it at the nearby switch on the wall and challenges Pride to a battle. I don't want to be too hasty calling every dumb moment of this game a plot hole. Let's chalk this up to Pride being too, well, prideful to not accept a challenge. But I do want to point out that Lan, by throwing his wireless device onto her side of the chasm, has put himself completely at her mercy. I mean, if she wants to stop Lan and Mega Man, all she has to do is pluck the device out of the wall and kind of chuck it out the window. Actually, come to think of it, how did she even get to the other side of that chasm? And why is the castle even designed this way? Okay, screw it, I'm adding this to the counter. Mega Man jacks in and confronts Pride's Navi, Nightman, who's actually pretty cool. Compared to the other mindlessly evil gospel Navis, Nightman actually seems to have a conscience, and is weighing his evil actions against protecting his operator. Mega Man tries to get through to him, but it's no use. They battle, and Mega Man ends up on top. Pride is shocked that she lost, but she reveals that she has one more trick up her sleeve. She activates the last booby trap, but in typical Wile E. Coyote fashion, she's hoisted by her own petard. The day is once again saved by Lan and Mega Man. Hooray. Back in the meeting room, one of the net battlers explains to Lan that Pride and the others are injured, but otherwise fine, and that Pride's been arrested. Chad tells Lan that Creamland was one of the first pioneers of the net, but soon couldn't keep up with the bigger countries who also grew their influence within the net's infrastructure. So they decided to become terrorists, I guess? This is a pretty flimsy backstory / motivation, but whatever. Let's move on because I really don't want to say the name of their country ever again. Lan shows concern to Chad over Proto Man's well-being, and Chad assures him that he'll be fine because of his backups. Kinda feel bad for Proto Man at this point. He keeps getting deleted and losing that day's memories. He's basically living the Drew Barrymore 51st Dates lifestyle at this point. I mean, that's gotta give him some brain damage after a while.
Sorry, Nightman. It's for your own good.
Chapter 5. Fight and Flight. Well, it's almost time to head back to Netopia. Before you go, there's a street merchant outside your hotel. He offers to sell you some overpriced gift shop crap, and considering you have friends at home that you have mildly positive feelings for, you might as well get them. Wait, isn't this the guy who stole my battle chips? No, wait, he's different.
We're different, but we're the same.
On the plane to Netopia, Lan has his first wet dream. Aw, our little boy is growing into a disgusting teenager right before our eyes. In the dream, Mail is ecstatic to see Lan return safely, and this is about as clear as the game ever gets about the nature of their relationship, as Lan usually plays it pretty cool with his feelings. Lan wakes up and decides to venture around the airplane, so let's meet some notable passengers. You have this suspiciously quiet and grouchy looking boy who I'm sure won't be important later on. There's this freaking loser who's obsessed with bugs. Freaking nerd bug loser. Then there's this Cruella de Vil looking mother. My first guess is that he owns an oil rig or something. And last but not least, there's this guy. This guy. Well, let me put it this way. In the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, they added a Disney Plus-esque disclaimer retroactively apologizing for racist caricatures that might appear in the game, and, well, this passenger is probably the inspiration for that disclaimer. In fact, I think even reading this dialogue out loud may not come off great for me or my wholesome f***ing family brand, so I'm gonna have an AI read it instead.
Dis is da bomb. Yo, it's too quiet. I need some tunes with rhythm up in dis mother.
You may be thinking to yourself, hey, that wasn't too bad. But don't you worry, it'll get worse. Anyways, Lan gets traveler's diarrhea and heads to the bathroom, where he overhears the flight attendants saying that one of the passengers brought a spider in their luggage and it got loose on the plane. Let's add this to the Lan's overseas trip really sucks counter. Mega Man suggests speaking to somebody who may know about bugs. The thing, though, is that spiders are arachnids, not bugs, so this f***head won't be able to help us. Or maybe he will. Anyways, f***head identifies the spider and confirms that it is in fact poisonous. Just then, a passenger gets bit and passes out. Lan finds a doctor on board and treats the victim, then goes back to get advice from the Bugman. They decide the best course of action would be to set up a trap. That means more fetch missions. Yay. He asks you to find a box, a stick, a string, and a bottle of whiskey. Lan presses Bugman on this, and he explains that his wife left him and he just needs to make the pain go away. Lan fetches all the items and goes back to first class, where he finds the funny gentleman from earlier in possession of a bottle of whiskey. Then he drops the best line in the game.
Was it? You want Suma dis whiskey? You just outta da crib, kid. Go suck yo mama's milk.
I can't tell you how happy this line makes me. When Lan presses him for the whiskey, this somehow leads to a rap battle. When it's your turn to go, you'll be presented with similar and completely arbitrary rhymes to choose from, all of which seem to be about f***ing. Again, this game is rated E for everybody. This fine gentleman will be so impressed with your rapping skills that he'll have no choice but to give alcohol to a minor, which, by the way, is a misdemeanor and can lead to a $1,000 fine. But who could be concerned about that right now? We've got a spider to catch. Lan and the Bugman set up their trap, and sure enough, they're able to capture the tarantula-sized spider. It's worth noting that this is literally the only obstacle in the game that Lan doesn't overcome by jacking into something. See, Lan, you don't need to jack it all the time. With all that settled, Lan goes back to his seat and falls asleep, presumably to have more wet dreams, when suddenly the plane starts shaking. Somebody's hacked the plane controls, and the crew asks the passengers if there's a net battler among them.
By the way, is there anyone on board who knows how to fly a plane?
Gotta add a point to the counter. Now you may be wondering, wait, they're jumping straight into a different disaster? What was even the point of the spider subplot? Well, the spider bite victim apparently was the airplane's official net battler, so that makes him incapacitated for this new situation. From a storytelling point of view, here's a suggestion. How about the airplane doesn't have a designated net battler on board at all? There, I just saved you a half hour of needless plot. Lan gets to the cockpit and jacks in, leading to a magnet-themed stage where Mega Man has to make his way through conveyor belt-riddled areas and solve directional puzzles. I actually like this stage a lot because its gimmick actually makes sense and isn't actively trying to f*** you like those zombies and vampires in the castle stage. Mega Man is trying to fix the right wing of the plane, so if you ask Lan for directions, he'll say, "Mega Man, find the right wing program." And my mind immediately went to this. I'm so funny, you guys. These jokes just come naturally to me. Eventually, Lan runs into the hacker, Magnet Man, and his operator, you guessed it, this bug man from earlier. Just kidding. It's Gauss, the oil tycoon looking guy. Lan asks why he's doing this, and he literally gives his life story. Hopefully this isn't a Watchmen thing where he's just expositing to buy time. Basically, he grew up poor, his family abandoned him, society didn't help him. He worked hard to get on top, and now he's teamed up with Gospel to create a super Navi that will burn down Net Society and recreate it from the ground up. You know, typical angsty anarchist shit. Apparently, there's a powerful program on board this airplane, for some reason, that Gauss needs to build the super Navi, thus the hijacking. Except, the game never really explains what this program is, why it's being transported on the plane, how Gauss knows why that hijacking the plane would somehow make it easier to steal a proxy to do that, he can't just do that remotely. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's time to fight. Magnet Man is a little tough. There's a magnet strip in the center that pulls you this way and that, and his body slams do a lot of damage, but he certainly isn't the hardest boss in the game. Once defeated, he cries out, "God bless Gospel," before exploding. I didn't know Navis were God-fearing. Wouldn't a program's god just be its creator or its operator? Now we're getting into confusing Westworld territory. Bugman overhears this conversation between Lan and Goss, presumably because Goss is still sitting in business class, shouting into his PET while the other passengers awkwardly watch. Bugman catches Goss off screen, probably with a big comical butterfly net, and the day is saved. Although, I mean, he's on a plane, it's not like he was gonna run away. As much as I actually enjoyed this section of the game, I've got to add a point to the plot hole score. There's no explanation why crashing the plane would have made it any easier to steal something from the plane's network. It's never explained why a top-secret power program is in there. And once Gauss got it, what was his plan? To die in a plane crash? Seriously, what was his end goal? And to make things make even less sense, there's this grouchy lad over here, which, to avoid spoilers, I won't get into yet, but let's just say for now, it makes Gauss's plan even more ridiculous. So that's one big fat plot hole point for the scoreboard. Oh my gosh, you guys, only one more plot hole and I get a free sub. I'm gonna get chicken bacon ranch. Now that you're back home in Netopia, it's time to go say hi to your friends. If you got the souvenirs from earlier, a bonus scene will play out here. You bought a brooch, a toy robot, and a gold ring. Take a wild guess who gets what. You give Mail the gold ring, and considering she saved your life and saved the day by giving you that wireless device earlier, Lana had better give it to her. Marry that girl. Marry her anyways.
Game Boy Advance.
僕らの力はバトルの中で目覚める。バトルを変えればロックマンも変わる。バトルネットワークロックマンエグゼ2。
タプコン。
Chapter 6, The Global Warming Challenge. Most people that have played Battle Network 2 know that this part of the game absolutely sucks and perfectly encapsulates everything wrong and frustrating about the series. Gospel has begun their new terrorist attack of the week, this time targeting environment programs across the world. These environment programs regulate the weather artificially, because this is supposed to be the future. However, in the wrong hands, these systems could create earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, raise an army of the undead, make men cheat on their girlfriends, etc. So when Lan wakes up the next morning, he finds that shit is going down all across the globe. But it's not just the real world that's affected. All across the net are mounds of multicolored ice crystals that are blocking paths and ruining people's days. I honestly can't remember if this ice is the cause of the real world issues or if they're results of it, but regardless, the only way to stop the natural disasters is to melt the ice. What this means for the player is that they need to wander all across the net, destroying the ice, with each piece of ice housing some viruses, so you're going to do a lot of wandering around with a lot of battling, and that's not to mention the random encounters that will slow things down too. If you thought that this couldn't get any more tedious, you're wrong. So very, very wrong. You can only destroy the red ones at first. It's not until destroying all of them that you can move on to the next color, and so on and so on. But the problem is, each area of the net has a variety of colors, so you'll be running circles around the net multiple times, like 4 hours. Think it can't get worse? You stupid bitch! You can't just move on between ice colors. You need to find cures for each specific color, which involve hunting down specific navies who know how to make them. You'll have to shake down some shady navies for clues where to find these guys, and the shady navies often won't talk to you unless you give them money or specific chips, which leads to fetch quests, inside fetch quests, inside fetch quests. Some of these fetch quests involve jacking out and running to random other locations to jack in there to get the items you need. Most of the back half of this adventure takes place in the Undernet, an area that is incredibly tedious to get to. So each time the story takes you out of the net, you need to go all the way back each time. Did I mention that this section sucks? Eventually, you wind up in the Undernet facing this shady character, and after defeating him in battle, he informs you that Gospel's HQ is, surprise, Koto Square. Koto Square, up until now, was pretty much just an area of the net not tied to any specific story plot, so I guess it makes sense that they were saving it for this plot twist, and upon second inspection, I guess it was a little obvious. I'm going to add one more point to the plot hole counter here, because this evil Navi uses his dying breath to tell Mega Man where Gospel is located, even though he has literally nothing to gain from doing that. Why wouldn't he just tell Mega Man to go f*** himself or something? It makes no sense. What's that? Do I get my free sub? Yeah, it's pastrami, f*** me. On your way to Koto Square, you'll get an email reminding you that shit's still going down across the globe. To the game's credit, if you travel to any of the previous areas like Okaden or Netopia, all the NPCs have new dialogue that reflects the panicking circumstances. Behind a secret door in Koto Square, you'll finally come face to face with the biggest asshole in the world for making me run back and forth across the internet. And his name? Seriously, Mega Man? Anyways, Freezeman tells you that he's responsible for the hacking of the environment systems across the world, and he invites Mega Man to join in watching the world crumble. You guys, I think Freezeman might have a little bit of a crush on Mega Man. For the penultimate boss in the game, he's suspiciously easy. He kinda doesn't do much. Once he's defeated, all the ice across the internet melts, leading to all the natural disasters across the world also magically stopping.
Save your energy. You're gonna be needing it.
Who are you?
Freeze Man, Senior Commander of Grave, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, why not?
Because your time is done. Nothing remains for any of you but a long, icy slumber until we at Grave take control of the world.
Yeah, well, you talk tough, but you're gonna have to face me first.
Chapter 7. Shake that Kotobuki, girl. Hey, real quick, if you're liking this retrospective, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you don't like this video, what are you still doing here? You had your chance to go, and if you put up with my bad jokes and puns for this long, why aren't you subscribed? And for that matter, why aren't you contributing to my Patreon? Haven't I earned your patronage yet? Give me your money. Despite Freeze Man being put on ice, net crime is still on the rise. Lan's dad and his useless colleagues decide to send a mass email to all city net battlers, encouraging them to investigate Koto Square. Lan, naturally, is the only one that decides to actually do it, because why would anybody else give a shit about saving the world, right? If you go back to the area you fought Freeze Man, you'll find a mysterious portal that wasn't there before. Suddenly, a purple Navi pops out, and Mega Man just straight up executes the dude. I get that purple Navis are usually associated with the villains, but good lord, no judge, no jury, Mega Man just straight up Robocops this dude based on next to no information. Immediately after Mega Man's bloodthirsty rage blackout, another purple Navi pops through the portal. Lan and Mega Man are at a loss what to do next, so they decide to go all the way back to Scilab to ask their dad for advice, because it's the future and nobody ever just wants to make a phone call. At Scilab, Lan's dad explains that the town of Kotobuki is emitting a strange amount of radiation, so much so that it's bleeding into their net, thus the distortion of space and time at Koto Square. Sure, let's say that is fine. He goes on to say that this is likely Gospel's HQ, a fact that he makes no attempt to justify. I mean, what does radiation and the net mafia have to do with each other? Why isn't their secret base in Chernobyl, then? And presumably, Kotobuki is an actual town with people in it, so why haven't thousands of people died from radiation poisoning? Why isn't this in the news? Lan says that he wants to be the one to go and stop Gospel. His dad says, "No, Lan, it's too dangerous. I'll never allow it." And then proceeds to give him a child-sized radiation suit that he had prepared ahead of time, because, of course, Lan was always going to be the sacrificial lamb. I mean, the Scilab net battlers suck. The city net battlers wouldn't even respond to an SOS asking them to investigate Koto Square, so really, this 11-year-old might be humanity's best chance, as colossally f***ed as that is. Lan's dad tells him to be careful, and I can't help but imagine he snickers a little as he says that, considering he's sending his son off to single-handedly stop the net mafia at their headquarters that's covered in deadly radiation. And also, you know, maybe they have guns or whatever. Did you ever think about that? I mean, I thought Lan's mom was bad for letting him fly to Fantasy Europe by himself, but his dad is on a whole nother level. Lan and Mega Man travel to Kotobuki and right away notice a lot of strange things. The Gospel HQ is kind of warping between the real world and the net world, which doesn't sound super scientific to me, but then again, what do I know? I was a C student, that's why I'm making YouTube videos. Mega Man lets you know that the radiation level is way higher than previously estimated. You know what? Lan's dad. He had one job, and it was to provide accurate data. The center of Kotobuki is a condominium building. If you talk to a nearby NPC, he'll tell you that everyone evacuated yesterday, and also that he's in a lot of pain. Well, no duh, dude, you're gonna die from radiation. Why haven't you left yet? Talk about winning the Darwin Award. Also, wait, Gospel's HQ is a shared condominium building? Wouldn't that mean that they share Wi-Fi and electricity and thin walls and a bunch of other stuff that might make their neighbors suspicious and tip off the cops? And how lame is that too? They couldn't get their own isolated property? Working in the net mafia really must not pay like it used to. Lan enters the building, and it's kind of just occurring to me how low effort Capcom made this radiation plot. I mean, they couldn't even give Lan a different sprite set to show he's wearing a suit. I'm not convinced you're wearing protection at all. Lan's about to go up the elevator when in strolls Dex, Yai, and Mail, insisting that they go with him to stop Gospel. Yai explains that they're all wearing radiation suits too, that they got from her rich father. Again, no custom sprites, so I guess we'll have to take her word for it. Well, at least Lan's dad isn't the only sadistic bastard letting his child run amok in a radioactive playground. Lan's friends explain that the whole building is one giant server, and that the radiation is causing new machines to grow on the upper floors. Okay, I'm adding 3 points to Slytherin because this plotline is f***ing ridiculous. Lan goes up and jacks into the server. The gimmick for this stage is that there's different teleporters that will transport you to the wrong area unless you fix them with items you could find in the stage. This is actually one of my favorite sections of the game, as the puzzles are decently hard and the enemies you run into provide a proper challenge for once. There, I've said something positive to balance out my earlier negativity. There's also a boss gauntlet here, where you'll face the previous bosses in a row, much to the theme of other Mega Man games before it. Weirdly enough, Shadow Man isn't included here. Maybe the logic is that because his operator was a contractor for Gospel, he never officially worked as one of them, and thus the organization wouldn't have access to Shadow Man's data? I'm probably being generous here, but let's take a point off the plot hole counter. After beating the final dungeon and sub-bosses, Lan makes his way to the top floor and confronts the head of Gospel, who really just has the most immaculate glowing hair. He's been powering up his super navi using radiation, I guess, and is finally ready to make its grand debut. In typical supervillain fashion, he offers Lan a number 2 position in his new empire, but Lan tells him to shove it. He jacks into the final Gospel server, and at this point, you can't save because you're in the endgame. I know this is not supposed to be a super realistic game that takes itself too logically, but just once, I'd love to see a villain just rip out Lan's PET, give him like a little slap across the face.
How can you snap? How can you snap?
And then proceed with his evil plan. I mean, stopping Mega Man and taking over the world literally just involves Gospel holding his hand over the jack-in port and telling Lan no touchies. But I digress. In the server, Mega Man encounters Gutsman, Roll, and Glide, but in a surprise twist, they're killed by the real Gutsman, Roll, and Glide. They explain that Gospel must have made copies of them, a plot point that doesn't really advance the story at all, except to explain how Lan's friends are now suddenly in the room with him. Also, Chod's there too. Gospel asks Chod what happened to his foreign disruption force, and Chod says that he killed them all. A bit of dialogue that's not elaborated on any further than that, and that's fine at this point, because whatever. As the radiation in the building reaches crazy levels, Gospel tells them that it's too late, and that his super navi is finally ready. His name? Bass.
I caught you a delicious bass.
Yes, I know his name is Bass, but when I was a kid, I thought his head looked like a fish, and you know what? I still do. So, for the remainder of this retrospective, I'm calling him Bass, and you know what? You can't stop me. You don't get to tell me how to pronounce words properly. Being proud of my ignorance is my right. Anyways, Mega Man confronts Bass, who then goes on to say my favorite line in the game, "Battle is my forte." That joke has layers, you guys. Bass is a bit of a pushover, which is to be expected because I think the organization with the dog face for their logo might have something else up their sleeve. When the battle ends, you're no longer facing Gospel, but that little grouchy kid from the airplane earlier. Turns out he was pulling a great and powerful Wizard of Oz, projecting a different persona via hologram or black magic or hallucinatory mushrooms or whatever, and this little punk is his true form. Gospel raises the radiation levels some more, and Lan tells his friends to get out while they still can, and that they'll die without suits. Supposedly, they are wearing suits, a fact I think the writers forgot about, and I could forgive them for that oversight because again, there are no sprites for their suits. They all leave, and it's now up to Lan and Mega Man to save the day. On the server, Bass begins the transformation into his ultimate form. Then he transforms into the giant dog form we've all been waiting for.
It's what we wanted all along!
In the real world, a term I'm using loosely here, Gospel takes the radiation and bumps it to 600%, a comical level well past the threshold Lan's suit was designed for. And there's absolutely no way he'd live a second through that, nor would any of the electronic servers, for that matter. Lan eventually passes out from the radiation, no longer able to operate Mega Man. But fortunately, the two used to be twin brothers, a pretty important plot point from the first game. So they have like a psychic twin connection, and are able to reach out to each other's souls. Lan discovers he doesn't need no hands to control Mega Man, he just needs his heart. It doesn't quite explain how Lan is able to load physical battle chips into his PET, but whatever, love triumphs overall, I guess. The final battle with Gospel, or Treble if you're nasty, is actually pretty difficult. He's got super powerful breath attacks that are hard to avoid, and he'll summon earlier bosses randomly as well. But remember everything you've learned and trained for, and before you know it, that dog will be put down Old Yeller style. Oh, I'm sorry, that's where you draw the line in a story about kids getting radiation poisoning? You people probably thought that Grave of the Fireflies was a comedy. It's just an internet dog. In the real world, Lan and Gospel's final battle was so intense that it made the desk completely disappear. Gospel Kid is passed out, and we discover his real name is Sean. Rather than drag him to a hospital, Lan spends who knows how long reading the kid's diary, and just a reminder, the room is still lousy with radiation, that part hasn't changed. He learns that the kid's parents died in a plane crash, that he had a sad upbringing, and that he learned to hate the world and prefer his computers over real people. When Sean wakes up, he realizes he's finished and tells Lan he wants to die, and I don't blame him, being named Sean and all. Lan, the ever-forgiving and benevolent protagonist, offers him an olive branch of friendship once he's paid for his crimes. As the story closes out, Lan narrates that he put in a good word on Sean's behalf, so he believes the authorities will go easy on him. This is probably the most unrealistic part of the whole story, if I'm being honest. This kid ran a terrorist cell. How's he gonna just get a slap on the wrist? What is he, an ex-president or something? In a hasty wrapping up montage, we find Lan and his friends camping once again, this time, hopefully, without the fear of getting murdered by Speedy Dave. Everyone shows up, even Higsby, who spends a curious amount of time hanging out with 11-year-olds. But it's okay, because he's goofy and dumb, so that makes Lan's parents cool with inviting this 40-year-old to the party. Adults are f***ing stupid, you guys. Lan's parents haven't seen each other in a while, so they decide that they're gonna do it loudly in this tent in the middle of the day. Chaud's there too, and while continuing to be an insufferable asshat, he does show enough decency to shake Lan's hand for like a second. Progress is progress, I guess. After Lan's dad gets done boning his wife in the tent that's like 5 feet away from where everyone's just trying to enjoy a wholesome family barbecue, he tells Lan that he suspects Sean didn't work alone, that someone more evil and experienced was likely running Gospel behind the scenes. I wonder who it could be. But seriously, there are so many questions here. I know Sean wasn't the brightest tool in the shed, but how is he completely unaware of another person incepting his plans and strategies into him? And what does that mean for all the Gospel operatives? Were they taking orders from the kid or someone else? If the mastermind behind this was smart enough to use a fall guy, why didn't everyone else have a fall guy? Especially Goss. I mean, surely he, a successful businessman and public figure, didn't want to unnecessarily die in a plane crash, right? Before everyone's about to eat, Lan's teacher shows up, seemingly just to remind him that he's a bad student and still hasn't finished his homework. Honest question, if pretty much the only thing Lan's schoolwork teaches him is how to fight viruses, why is he so opposed to doing his homework? He spends the entire game fighting viruses. And on the other side of the coin, why is his teacher so obsessed with him proving he knows how to do something on a small scale when he's already proven himself competent on a grand scale? Anyways, to escape his responsibilities, Lan makes up a flimsy excuse about the stove being on fire and gets ready to jack in Mega Man to put it out. Mail points out that stoves are supposed to be on fire, but Lan's already begun his catchphrase. Cue audience laughter and roll credits. Except, you know, it's not like Lan gets sucked into the internet or anything. He actually hasn't done anything to avoid this awkward social situation. What Lan essentially has done is like, you're at a restaurant with your girlfriend and she's about to break up with you, and you go, hold on real quick, I gotta do this thing. And then you proceed to pull out your cell phone and just awkwardly ignore her and avoid eye contact while you silently play Candy Crush until she leaves. The final scene plays out after the credits roll. In the secret World 3 net, the real Bass is hunting down clones of himself. He's pretty peeved that Gospel copied his data, a plot point that should have warranted a lot more attention, but is instead relegated to one line of dialogue. He hates humans even more now, and vows to get revenge, possibly in later games, but we'll see. There's a fair amount of endgame content I guess we could cover, but I don't want to, and you can't make me. I think we've talked about this game long enough. It's really hard for me to objectively review a Battle Network game, because it was one of my favorite series growing up, and nostalgia's tainted me and stolen my objective purity.
You ruined me!
Honestly, it is only because I love this series so much that I can make this video so snarky and rag on this game so hard. If any other game were making me do half the backtracking I had to do during Freeze Man's stage, I'd just throw my hands up in frustration and call it quits. But Mega Man Battle Network is different. And I think it's because the game is so charming and fun and makes you overlook major things. Even the writing, as elementary and sometimes juvenile as it is is still incredibly sincere. But I definitely want to talk more about the mechanics of the game and all the things that make it special. I do plan on making retrospectives for the other Battle Network games as I slowly make my way through the Legacy collection, so I'll save some of those thoughts for the next video. Honestly, a lot of my praise for this game could be applied to Battle Network 3, so maybe that will be my nice and gentle retrospective. To sum up Battle Network 2, horrible story, tedious gameplay, still loved it. 7 out of 10. If you like this video, subscribe. Your views and comments and subs help my channel grow, which allows me to do bigger videos like these. Thanks for watching, see you for the Battle Network 3 retrospective, whenever that comes out.
Chicky chick baby. Make me go kaboom. Can ya dig it, lady? Oh my love fire. Comin' to ya soon.